Hello and welcome to the Soundstage Audiophile Podcast. In this second season of the show, host Jordan Guth is joined by a new guest each episode who knows something about hi-fi that Jordan doesn't. And who knows, while he's learning about all of this, you might learn something too. So with no further ado, here's Jordan and this week's guest.
Hello and welcome back to the Soundstage Audiophile Podcast. My name is Jordan Guth, and this episode, Dennis Berger is joining us. He is a Soundstage editor and also the producer for this podcast. So welcome, Dennis. Yeah. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks for having me, but I'm the one who made you do it. So
you had me.
thanks for listening to me when I told you to have me on your podcast.
Yeah, I really appreciate having you on. And I'm sure the listeners like the friendly, familiar voice.
Yeah. So what are we talking about this week, man?
So this week, and this is actually interesting because a lot of the time we talk before and after the podcast recordings. And I don't remember if this was the first podcast or another one. You sent me a link to an article that you wrote, and it was "The Moon" by Simaudio has exited the echo chamber.
Yeah.
And a lot of what's covered in that article is this really interesting insight about how a particular audio company, Simaudio, was showing up in more mainstream content, more mainstream media as part of their advertisement endeavors and part of their marketing endeavors.
Yeah, part of the reason that I put this in your inbox is because I was really drawn into the conversation that you and Doug had in the first episode that you did about just brand awareness and your exposure to KEF and how, you're exposed to all of these brands that maybe you wouldn't have organically come across in your life. And that sort of develops, I think you've got a bit of a what would be called a brand loyalty to KEF, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's why I wanted to put this in front of you, because what you were talking about was a lot of what I talked about with Étienne Gautier of Simaudio. And so that's why I put that article in front of you. And then I realized almost none of my conversation with Étienne actually ended up in that article because here's the weird thing. And maybe this is a little bit of sausage making that people don't care about. But, when I'm writing an article like this, I don't really decide ahead of time. Am I going to write a prose article? Is this going to be a Q&A? Whatever. A lot of times it just comes down to I get the material, I look at it, I see what works. And what I realized with this conversation with Étienne was to do it as a Q&A, it would have been 3 times the word budget that we normally have, to get the point across, because it was a point that unfolded, across quite a long conversation. And so I had to break that up and put it in more to, sort of a prose written piece. But like I said, it left this longer conversation that was 30 minutes that I ended up, while I was producing the podcast months and months and months ago, and I was learning how to do that, I took this interview with Étienne and edited it just as practice, just so when Brent couldn't do the editing and mastering and stuff like that, I could step in. And this piece of audio was my scratch sheet. This is what I practiced on. But then I gave it to you and I was like, hey, should we run this? Because I think it was a cool conversation.
And I think it's super relevant, super fascinating, because this is literally bringing hi-fi to the mainstream, and it's exposing people to hi-fi that may not have ever heard about these brands or anything like that. And I was really intrigued by the conversation and how it kind of went and where Simaudio is in their kind of marketing and their thought process behind why they chose this particular program. And I think that would be interesting for people to hear. So,
let's talk about the program for a minute, because the program is a program called Baumgartner Restoration. And I would say, of all the stuff that my wife and I watch, this is probably one of our top 3 shows. And it is this really amazing. Julian Baumgartner is the largest private art conservator in the U.S. He's in Chicago. He does not work for a museum, which most art conservators do. So he is going to restore the painting that, you found in your granddad's attic that you found out is worth $20 million. And you're like, crap, let's restore this thing or whatever. But this is artwork that you normally would not get to see otherwise, because it's not hanging in museums. It's in people's private collections. So I love it for that respect, to get to see him doing all of this restoration work, which is an amazing process. But it's an online show. And so their advertisers are all of this sort of the usual suspects, the, Magellan TV and the Trade Coffee and just all of these advertisers that you expect to see on YouTube. And then all of a sudden, Moon by Simaudio comes in, and Julian has got an Ace system with a pair of Voice 22 speakers. And I was just like, whoa, this is weird. I'm not used to seeing hi-fi presented to such a mainstream audience. And it was interesting for me. So that's why I wanted to talk to Étienne.
Yeah. So I think without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to the interview that you had with Étienne and come back, add some thoughts, and dissect some of what he said and apply that to how hi-fi and marketing come together. What do you say?
Very cool. Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So let's do that. For joining me today. I have to admit, I'm sort of so taken aback by this ad that I saw that I'm writing a story about it. And so I wanted to dive in, but first to give you a little bit of background, my wife and I, there's a concept called appointment television where, you set aside dedicated time every week to watch a specific show, as close as possible to, we don't have a lot of that anymore, but Baumgartner Restoration is one of the shows that every Monday evening when my wife gets home from work, we're going to sit down with supper. We're going to watch that show. And, Julian has all of these different advertisers and sponsors, and, from coffee to, streaming platforms. And we sat down to watch this episode, and it's Moon by Simaudio. And I was so shocked by that like I had to pause it. And it's like, wait a minute, this hobby that I love so much, high performance audio, I'm not used to it getting any mainstream attention. I am not used to it being accepted as normal. I'm used to it being treated as this sort of niche thing. Whereas, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, you would flip through the pages of a magazine and see ads for hi-fi, for what it was at the age. And somewhere along the way, it just became not normal. And so I guess what I wanted to do was pick your brain and say, like, you have a limited advertising budget. You have to pick and choose where you're spending money on sponsorships and ads and things like that. Why Baumgartner Restoration? Why did you go to this show about, a private art conservator?
Okay. So for me too, I want to explain you a little bit of background for our, marketing strategy and where we're coming from. And, so probably, our company Simaudio, because we're in business for 40 years, we do the Moon brand. Before that we had Celeste, and before again, Sima. And for a long, long time in our history, we were some kind of very traditional in terms of marketing, company, I would say, in the industry. So basically, posters, shows, magazine ads, reviews, and that's it. That was the whole marketing we were doing. And almost 9 years ago, the company was bought back by 2 employees and a new partner. And obviously, they wanted to modernize the company and the way we were doing things, and in order to make the company grow. So we developed new products. So the Ace All-in-One, the Mind technology, the 390. So that was for product. But obviously, if you develop such products, you need to develop the marketing that goes with it. So obviously, we changed our image, we changed our logo, we changed the website, we changed the way we speak, we present ourselves, we changed the value of the company. So we changed, many, many core things of the marketing itself. And so at the beginning, we tackled, the biggest things, which were, websites, stuff like this. And then we moved to new marketing strategies. So social media campaigns. And, so when we did that, we actually defined three personas that we address in terms of marketing. So first persona is actually a man over 50, which for hi-fi is a hobby and spend a lot of money on I would say classic components. The second persona is younger, 40, 45, can be a woman, and buying high performance audio because they usually have a high revenue. They have much more interest in the music than into the technology related to it. They like it as a performance system, but they are less into like understanding how it works. What they want is the result and what is best for their music and fitting their environment, like in terms of design, features and everything. And the third persona is what we call the Henrys. So it's a high earner, not rich yet. So those ones, we consider them as future customers. So for now, they're not buying from us, but from time to time, we address them with marketing strategy. For example, we did a partnership with the Bel Air TV show, which is a US TV show, a new version of The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, but on a more drama way.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
Yeah. We had two systems in the show, one in Uncle Phil's office, which was a reference system, and one in Carlton's room, which was an Ace with a pair of Voice 22. So, we attack those that third persona with actions like this. Like they see the Moon brand, they are attracted to it, but they don't have the money yet to buy it. But they're going to remember that was the system they saw into Bel Air. And at some point, if someday they want to buy, a hi-fi system, with a bit of luck, they're going to remember that, that was the system that I saw into Bel Air and possibly buying it.
It would be really easy for people to dismiss that as effective, but I'm sort of thinking back to 20 years ago or so, and most of my friends who are not into audio, the reason that they were aware of the existence of Martin Logan speakers is because Joey and Chandler had them on Friends, So, yeah,
big time. And and I'm sure of that. And the other thing is that obviously we're in our industry we have superb relationship with many partners, and Soundstage is one of them, of course. And we did some great videos lately and superb stuff, and that's great because it's innovative, making more videos and interesting stuff in terms of marketing. And I think, this is where we have to go. On the other side of things, my point of view on that is that obviously most of my marketing budget is going to actions that I know that will pay back immediately, but also I want to try new things. I want to try differently from the rest of the industry. Mm-hmm. And then with the marketing team, we were like, okay, let's define who we want to address. So obviously we wanted to address our persona number 2, which is the potential, 40-ish something persona, male and female, audience that had a good revenue and that might get into hi-fi for the first time, or you're already into the hi-fi, world, knowing it a little bit. And we were like, okay, what do they like also in life? So obviously, you have the common, answers: wines, whiskey, cigars, cars, watches, and stuff like this. And one of them was art. And then when we mentioned that, because I'm also following Julian's, YouTube channel, I said, there's this fantastic guy that I like very much. And what I like about Julian is the fact that when he does a partnership with the brand, he actually creates something that's, that is Julian. All his videos are so well done, in terms of, imaging and everything, that, it's just gonna align with who we are in terms of quality. And then obviously there was the whole aspect of it. Like, his job is actually to take piece of art and restore them to give them to give their beauty back, I would say. And you know what? We're pretty much doing the same thing. When you listen to music into your car, and most of the people are, doing this, they actually have a very partial, listening of what they're listening. Mm-hmm. And our job as a hi-fi company and as Moon is trying to transmit the most from the artist to the listener. And Julian is actually doing the same thing. His job is actually to take what the artist created, put it back at the right place with the right, presentation for the viewer to actually enjoy it at its peak of beauty.
Yeah, he always says, I don't want people to see my work. I want them to be able to look past my work and see the painting.
Exactly. And we're doing the same thing, which is great. So we were kind of very aligned in terms of mentality, and so we decided to contact Julian. And he wanted to understand why we contacted him. And so we explained. And we said, Julian, it's our first complete system. It's the first time we're doing speakers and everything. And I think your story relates a lot to ours. And he was like, oh, yeah, I totally get it. So he actually, came back with a story that he wrote about jazz music and art, abstract art and everything, mm-hmm. which we found fantastic. And then he shot some videos. We had some, back and forth sessions with him. And then he did it. And we were super happy with the results. And yeah, obviously, Julian has a huge crew following him on YouTube. So
I mean, some of his videos have 6 million views. I mean, he's got 1.6 million subscribers. That's that's as mainstream as things get these days.
Yeah, and he explained it to us like, you know what, guys, I'm not taking all the partnership that are offered to me. I want to select the partnership and the companies I'm working with. And, because it needs to relate to what I'm doing and who I am and everything. So, it's really interlinked to who we are and how we see things, so it was kind of a natural match in between him and us. So,
one of the things that surprised me was some of the language that he used in the ad. There are things that I would not expect to have been directed toward a sort of mass market audience, talking about waveguides, talking about crossovers, things like that. What was the conversation like that led to that? Did that come more from him or more from you or what?
No, a little bit from us, because obviously, talking about waveguides and crossover and stuff like this was a bit more in the path of showing that we know what we're talking about and we are a technology company. At some point we needed to show that we're different. It's not just a regular technology of hi-fi system you're seeing here. It's something that it's, quite advanced in terms of technology. So bringing, some words like this actually, I think generate interests from, newer consumers to hi-fi, in terms of, those guys, they have developed, multiple things for it. So, I'm I'm actually curious about it. So
that it's interesting to me because I do write for some mainstream publications, mass market publications, and I write about audio for them. And it's funny when I try to bring in language like that, it's always struck down by my higher level editors. People don't know what this means, but I was just curious, like, was there ever any pushback about that? Was there ever any hesitancy to go there, or?
Obviously, sometimes we have discussions about that. But, with Julian, it was like, in his videos, he uses, many, many terms that someone who didn't watch his previous videos could wonder what he's talking about. The heat wave table, the impastos, all
Washikozo, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, what this guy is talking about? But at some point, okay, you understand that you're watching someone that is technical and explaining you the technicality of his work. Mm-hmm. And at some point, this is also a part of who we are. We're not building simple speakers. We're building high technology speakers and high technology electronics. So the point was also to demonstrate that.
Going forward, as you continue to try to reach this new audience, do you think shows like Baumgartner Restoration are going to continue to be part of the equation, or are you looking to branch out in multiple different directions? And if so, like, what other kind of places are you thinking of trying to reach those customers? How are you going to get to them?
Obviously, and the experience we have with Julian is still fresh for us. So obviously, we're still, looking at the KPIs and everything. But I think it's just a start for us. I think we're gonna continue probably with Julian, on other level of performance eventually. And because it's going to be like what I find interesting with Julian is that we could upgrade him his electronic, and he would have a story to tell about it. Keeping the Voice 22, having better electronics, and it would have something to say about enhancing the experience. Mm-hmm. Because as you mentioned earlier, the marketing is and still very, very classic in terms of the global of the industry, the hi-fi industry. And usually everybody is talking about performance, quality of their, how they build units and technologies. And at the end, I think it's not just that. I think it's also the how do you enjoy it? How do you like to listen to your music? And at the end, you can have the best technology in the world. If you don't have fun, you don't have fun. And we have to have fun. We have to have fun working. Yes. And at some point, you need to see that in your marketing and communication that you are just not building boxes. They are actually music lovers having fun doing what they do. And again, finding little spots that nobody is looking at, but actually will be very powerful for us. And I think Julian is the exact example of that.
I think so too. I absolutely agree. Oh, Étienne, I thank you so much for talking to me about this. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Oh, no problem.
I actually wanted to turn the tables on you and interview you here, Jordan, because the reason that I put this interview in front of you and the reason I sent that article to you was some of the stuff that you said, like I said in your first episode, about just brand awareness and what companies are doing to make people aware of their branding. So what do you think about Simaudio's efforts? Do you think a program like Baumgartner Restoration is a good place to reach people who might not know about hi-fi? What do you think about what some of the other brands are doing to reach a general audience? Do you think it's having an impact? Do you think it's the right move? Like, what do you think about it?
So, one of the things that Étienne said, and I think it's really valuable to know your audience. He was talking about kind of the comparison about who would watch this content to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. And he was talking about, well, they might be interested in, I think he mentioned like high-end wine and all these other things. Mm-hmm. And when you're looking at those type of people, well, high-end audio, hi-fi, kind of makes sense. Like it fits that lifestyle. So mm-hmm. I think they nailed it in terms of their audience. I don't know. I haven't asked them about this, and maybe this could be an interesting follow-up. Maybe we could get Étienne on the show or something like that to kind of dig in a little bit and see if they've actually had the results that they were expecting long-term from that engagement. But I got to hand it to Étienne and the Simaudio team, because I think they really nailed the audience that they were looking to engage with this.
Yeah. What's funny is I know most people think of watching YouTube as you're watching it on your phone or a tablet or a computer or something like that. No, my wife and I watch it in our home theater through Roku Ultra, right? So I normally don't see the comment section on shows like this, right? Because it's like I'm having a big 10-foot experience. I'm not having a mobile experience or desktop experience. But when I was writing this article, I thought I'm going to go into the comment section and see if anybody else noticed. And a lot of people did. They were like, oh, this is really cool. Or some people already knew about, Simaudio, and they were like, hey, wow, glad to see Simaudio advertising here. So there was a range of reactions too. But here's what's funny is as I was digging back through the archives, I didn't see any other episode where anybody made any reference to the sponsor of the show. Like, when Squarespace sponsors Baumgartner Restoration, I don't see people going, oh, I built a website with Squarespace, right? But with Simaudio, people were responding to it and reacting to it. So I think you're right. I think you're onto something. I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Now, your reference of Squarespace is super fascinating because Squarespace is kind of known. The joke is like, you don't have a podcast unless Squarespace sponsors it.
I guess we don't have a podcast then.
we don't have a podcast. Squarespace is going to be calling us up anytime. But it's this idea that Squarespace has this real shotgun approach of how they market, and they have the money, they have the budget to do that, right? They can just throw their name around everywhere and hope that the podcast is relevant to somebody. Now, Simaudio, high-end audio companies, they might be selling very high-end products. Sometimes the margins actually aren't there. Like you might be surprised with some of these high-end audio companies, how much money they actually have set aside for marketing. Mm-hmm. So they do need to be more precise in how they market. It seems like they really struck a chord with the audience that they were going after. And
I think so.
What you were saying about the comment section really highlights that. Now, there's a lot. One, the fact that you watch YouTube as kind of like a main source of entertainment, and it might just be me. Like I always consider YouTube as like a how-to engagement medium, or like a like quick reviews. I don't usually think of it as like long form entertainment.
My wife and I are really big into UK quiz shows and panel shows, right?
Oh yeah.
And they don't show those here. Even if you have BritBox or BBC America or anything like that, they're not showing those here, but they're on YouTube. Somebody's always uploading them to YouTube. And, so we watch Would I Lie to You? And that's how we discovered Taskmaster, which is our favorite show, because the people who are making the show Taskmaster thought we could reach a bigger audience if we just put our episodes on YouTube, right? And so they're a little behind, right? Like now you're getting full episodes from last year, right? But they're on YouTube. And, I would say that 75% of what we watch in our home theater is YouTube. And my dad these days, since cutting the cord, I would say 90% of what he watches is YouTube. And it's in his media room and it's on Roku. So yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. So maybe one of the takeaways there is for these brands, not only trying to get into the more kind of mainstream stuff, but maybe this is an example of how you can reach your desired audience in other non-traditional ways, like YouTube content.
Look, YouTube is... I think hi-fi coverage is exploding on YouTube. My dear friend Steve Guttenberg has just huge success with his YouTube channel, the Audiophiliac. And you've got all sorts of people who are doing these wonderful things on YouTube in terms of audiophile coverage. Aaron's Audio Corner, Danny Ritchie, Cheap Audio Man. All of these people are making amazing content, but they are already drinking the Kool-Aid. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I don't mean it's a cult. It's just they're already hooked. That's what they're about. Baumgartner Restoration has nothing to do with audiophilia or hi-fi. Yeah. It is mainstream. It is people who like art. I mean, that's pretty much everybody. People who like process. And to see him going, hey, like, I got this cool stereo system, right? And this is just like a part of my life now. And for him not to be a hobbyist, right? And yet still be able to discuss the virtues of having this high performance stereo system in his studio. You don't have to be in the club to enjoy the products, right? And I felt that was the big takeaway message for me. It just normalizes it.
Yeah, well, that's it. It normalizes it. Now, do you think he appreciated the audio as much before he heard the Simaudio setup? Like, do you think this is a newfound love for it, or is it?
I think he mentioned before, like, and I think if you watch old episodes, you see, like, you just get a Bluetooth speaker in the background. Like, it's just like a little, Bluetooth speaker that you could hold in one hand, thrown it on a table or something like that, right? And from what I understand from talking to Étienne, like, not on the record, right? Yeah. So maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I am anyway. He's like, it's like we approached him and it took a little convincing. And part of that convincing, I think, was sending him a system going, hey, check this out, listen to it. And so it's my impression, however accurate that is, I don't know, I wasn't there, but it's my impression that his reactions to this gear and how he actually incorporated it into his space and how he actually used it were all very genuine. So it was just a matter of exposure. This was not something he prioritized. It was not something he was really exposed to, but the company said, hey, check out the system. And he checked out the system and went, oh, there's value in this, right? Like, this is actually enhancing my life. So that was one of my big takeaways from it all.
Now, an interesting question, and you probably know this because you continue to watch the shows. Do the speakers are they still there, basically?
They are. Okay. They are, but no attention is drawn to him. They've become part of the studio, and you will see him playing music or whatever. But it is just part of the aesthetic of the show now.
Well, so. and that's an interesting point because it's authentic, right? Like, he is authentically enjoying those speakers. He's probably listening to them on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. It's not this one and done marketing.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question, Jordan. We've established the fact that I'm elderly, so my viewing tastes maybe don't align completely with the audience that I'm trying to reach. But you are the audience that I'm trying to reach with Soundstage Access. Like, you are my target reader. So say Simaudio decided, you know what, we don't want to reach Dennis. We want to reach Jordan. Like, what are you watching? Do you watch? Like, you've already said you don't really think of YouTube as on par with other maybe streaming video services, but like, where would they reach you?
So I'd like to think that I watch kind of a great deal of different content. I am a big Star Wars nerd. So I don't know that Étienne would be able to reach me in my Star Wars content.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see the Ace all-in-one player on the next episode of The Mandalorian. So.
No. Although, you know what? There could be some tie-ins with some of these like really futuristic looking hi-fi speakers and stuff like that. I don't know.
You know where it might make a good appearance would be like in Andor, because Andor has got an aesthetic that is very, very rooted in real places, real locations, real architecture, and they, try to make it look more exotic or what have you. But yeah, I could see
it's the everyday of the Republic. It's
I could see it in the background of Andor season 2. So yeah, maybe
like a Nautilus speaker or something like that just looks so wild, and you might not even like associate it to be a speaker.
That is the sort of thing that you could see in Mon Mothma's apartment. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So, Étienne, there you go. Free advice. Get on Star Wars.
There you go. Get on Star Wars. I'm sure it's easy. So there's the Star Wars aspect. I was a real big fan of Netflix's Daredevil and Punisher series. Yeah. I think those would be more contemporary places that I can actually imagine seeing some of that high-end stuff.
They're bringing Daredevil back, man.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm very, very excited about that.
Me too.
I'm curious to see who of the cast actually sticks around and who they're going to try and sub out, if they're going to kind of keep it in the same universe, or if they're kind of presenting this as an alternate universe.
I'm actually more interested in whether or not they're going to keep the behind the scenes team the same, because I have to say, whoever their fight coordinator
their choreography was insane. The hallway fight.
The hallway fight, the first time you put something in costume, is just like one of the most, that I would rather watch that than ballet any day of the week, because it is the most beautiful choreography I've ever seen. But yeah, slip some speakers in the background there. It makes sense. Sure. Matt Murdock is blind, so his entire experience is audio, right? It would be a perfect tie-in. There you go.
You know what? That's actually a really good point. I feel like Matt Murdock has the means. He has the, I mean, he can't see, but he does seem to have the aesthetic taste. When you look at his apartment, everything looks really cool and like trendy and all that. So yeah, Simaudio, get one of the big amps in there and hook up a cool set of speakers. I think that would be a cool tie-in.
But here's the question.
Yeah.
Does it matter in the end? Do you think it's enough to entice people? Would it entice you?
So, and there's different goals in different marketing endeavors, right? Like there's this idea that sometimes companies do advertisement or marketing programs for brand awareness. Sometimes they do it for specific product awareness. Sometimes they do it just to reinvigorate or kind of reshare the voice and the concept and the beliefs of the company. Yeah. So I do see value in putting money behind marketing and putting it in different places. When you have an emotional connection to anything, whether it be music, whether it be an image, artwork, content in general, when you have that emotional connection and you see things that are part of that emotional connection, that develops in you. That is something that you tie to that connection. So a great example of that, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, my love letter to Kef, where I'm really attached to that brand. Well, that experience that I had listening to those blades that first time, like that stuck with me. Like that kind of set my belief on what high-end audio could be and can be and all of that. So yeah, like tying that emotional connection that some people feel when they watch a show or look at paint restoration on a YouTube channel, like associating that connection with a brand, whether it be hi-fi or something else, can be extremely powerful.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
That's a really good point. It's a really good point. I got one last question for you before we wrap it up, Jordan.
Yeah.
What's the soundtrack to your life, buddy?
So, soundtrack to my life. I am all over the place. I listen to a lot of heavy metal, a little bit of Slayer, a little bit of Megadeth, a little bit of the Panteras and kind of the really grungy stuff.
Old school. Yeah. Old school. Okay. Yeah. Do you mess with any Sepultura?
A little bit, not like heavy. Like
that was my jam back in the day, Sepultura.
So I think to give context here, a lot of this is coming from I grew up BMXing, so trick biking. We got to travel the world and do some really cool stuff. And a lot of that music ended up in the bike videos that we made and watched and all that stuff. So there's that, talking about emotional connection. There's that tie-in that when I listen to these songs, like it just gets me really excited and it puts me in this place where I'm, I don't know, 18 years old or 17 years old or however old again, doing these, what some would call dumb things on a bike. But going forward, there's also the songs that I listen to more recently. So I do listen to a lot of the old rock. I do listen to a lot of the grungy stuff, the Nirvana. But after speaking to Jeff, I started listening to the Churches, and I think like the voice there is just absolutely beautiful. But yeah, there's no particular soundtrack to my life. If you looked at my top played music, it would probably be some of the heavy metal stuff. Yeah. But on a daily basis nowadays, it's much more varied. I'm much more looking at kind of a range of things that kind of touch me emotionally and put me into a good mood.
I'll give you one to add to your rotation.
Yeah.
Hani Rani is probably the soundtrack to my life right now. She is a Polish pianist, keyboard player. Oftentimes she will be surrounded by like 3 different types of keyboards. She'll move back and forth between them. She's got this style that's kind of, it's not really jazz, it's not really classical. It's kind of ambient, but not, because it pulls your attention in, but it's got the vibe and the aesthetic of ambient music. She does some vocals too, rarely, but I'm obsessed with her right now. Hani Rani, H-A-N-I-A, and the last name is R-A-N-I, Hani Rani. You got to listen to her, add her to the rotation. So.
I'm going to put this on my phone for the plane ride.
All right, buddy, let's wrap this thing up, man. Yeah. You got to get on a plane.
I got to jump on a plane.
Yeah, you got a few heavy weeks of travel, and I do not envy you a bit. So,
well, I appreciate it, and we'll be back hopefully over the next couple weeks, and we'll get a new guest on, and we'll start a new conversation.
Groovy.
All right.
Thanks, man.
All the best, Dennis. Take care, everyone.
Bye.